Hi, everybody. It's Josefa Salinas. It has been a long time since we have gotten together, mostly because I've been on crutches for the past 5 weeks. I severed my hamstring and had to have it reattached surgically. Well, it actually is 3 pieces. This is something I learned when I had this accident. And yeah, they had to reattach it to my hip. So I've kind of been out of sorts, but I am back in full swing. Only 2 more weeks on crutches, and I'm pretty happy about that. But I am here today because I needed to get back in contact with everyone. There's so much going on out there, so much to talk about. And one of the things I wanted to bring into the studio with me today is a dear friend who is here to promote a book that her father wrote. The name of the book, I don't know if can I hold it up here or we already have it up? Okay, we've already got it up. The name of the book is Just Another Nigger, My Life in the Black Panther Party. It is written by Field Marshal Don Leacox, was it? Don Leacox. And in the studio with us, his daughter, Kimberly. Welcome, my friend. How are you?
Hey, Josefa. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so good to have you here. And I have to tell you that this book was, as soon as you told me about it, I went on Amazon and got it right away. I had it delivered that day because it's the eloquence with which this is written is absolutely amazing. I want to read something in here. The very first thing when you open up the book, and this is written. The entire book is written by your father. Okay, yes. All right. So the book says, those of us with experiences in the struggle have a historical responsibility to pass them on. This is knowledge, people. So listen. Mistakes are the nursery of new ideas, so we must share them too. If we continue to hide and distort our errors, those coming after us will be condemned to repeat them. We cannot afford the luxury of leaving it up to historians to reveal what we did after 50 or 100 years have passed. Present conditions demand we tell our stories now. How profound. And what person in the audience couldn't learn from just that statement right there from your father? Yeah. But let's just back it all up here and talk about Field Marshal Donald Lee Cox, Field Marshal for the Black Panther Party.
What would you like to know?
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. Your dad was a Black Panther.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about being a child and having your father a part of an organization that it really seems as though was very misunderstood, perhaps did an offshoot in some directions that some members didn't seem comfortable with at certain points. So, as a little girl, Daddy's in the Black Panther Party. What the heck was that like?
Oh, that was cool. I went to a private school, and it was a Lutheran school. And one day, I came in with a curly afro. Well, the principal asked me what was wrong with my hair. And I'm like, what do you mean? Well, it was messy. Oh, I called my daddy. I don't remember what I told him, but the next thing I know, there he is with about 6 Panthers in their black leather jackets, their black turtlenecks, their black berets, and their black pants. And my father always spoke eloquently. And especially if he got quiet, you got scared.
Right.
Yes. And so he had a very nice talk with the principal and got his point across, and he left. I wasn't bothered again, but I didn't go back the next year either. I had people say things to me like, your daddy's a baby killer at the school, things like that. But I knew who and what my father was, so that didn't bother me. But he was a very good man. What I love about this book, you don't see any ego. He was a person that wanted to get something done to help us all, not just blacks, but everyone, because he was biracial. He was raised by his Jewish, Swedish grandmother. So he was wanting all that, with others. And he was trying to get it together. And there it is.
So having a dad in the Black Panther Party, you grew up in a very political family, I would assume. What kind of conversations went on at home?
Well, it really, I should say we weren't political. See, that was part of the problem with my mom and dad. He was very much so. And my mother was just, no other way to say it, she was bougie. And she wasn't having it, So that was hard because we had people in the family with the same last name.
Here, I'm going to move this microphone a little more in front of you because I'm quite sure
Okay.
that they're not hearing you properly.
Okay.
Okay.
He,
Go ahead and you're talking about mom. Mom was bougie. Dad was political.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that was very hard. It wasn't going to happen. My mother went one way, and she just couldn't follow my daddy. So that was very hard. Again, like I say, the funny thing is you have parents. It's do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
But I have this dad that's over here being all political, doing his thing, but yet wanting me to be this other girl. So that was something there, because, hey, he wasn't telling me to do what he was doing, so I still knew I had my boundaries. Don't step over it, like a parent would, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my father brought us up to be very politically active. And I remember as a child, well, not as a child, really, as a teenager, my father was one of these, I call him a rebel. I guess that's the best way to describe him. God rest his soul. Raul Santana Flores Salinas was a rebel. And there was a time when he was asked to translate some pamphlets for the Communist Party. And he did it. Not because he was a communist or that he even believed in communism. What my father believed in was that everyone should have access to all of the information so that they can make a decision for themselves about what they want to believe in. That's what he believed in. However, the FBI still investigated him and the family because of it. So there was very clearly a time, and this, your father, we're talking the 60s, right? When
he wrote this in the 80s, but
when his participation in the Black Panther Party.
Right. It started in late 60s.
Uh-huh.
But he started, I guess, getting awake a little bit. I want to say about 63, 64, things like that. He had coworkers that gave him books, and he started getting into things that way. Mm-hmm. Because, like he said, he was just a country bumpkin. He just knew he wanted to make a difference. And when the bombing in Birmingham happened with the 4 little girls, that touched him. And I believe it was because, I was a little girl.
You had daughters.
Yeah. And that is the one thing he's always told me that really started waking him up. He knew something had to change. He just didn't know what, he didn't know how. And he says it, until he starts reading and learning that there are things out there he can do.
In the 60s, so this is late 60s, early 70s, there was a different feeling up in the Bay Area. People got together and protested. I know in one of the photos here in the book, because there's some really very interesting photos, who is this standing right next to your father there?
Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy. See, there's photos in the book. Leonard Nimoy right there, and this says Don Cox at Vietnam Moratorium Rally, Polo Fields at Golden Gate Park, San Francisco, November 15th, 1969. So there were a lot of people who interjected themselves into this fight. The Bernsteins.
Oh, yeah.
But Felicia and Leonard Bernstein, they had a Park Avenue apartment in New York. They had a cocktail party in January 14th, 1970 to raise money to defend the Panther 21. So there were a lot of people who actually stepped up, stepped out, and became a part of this movement. Yeah. So what do you remember about that time?
Oh, the Bernsteins, Daddy hated Tom Wolfe after, because he's the one that wrote Nobody else had cameras or, any recordings, but he snuck one in. And unfortunately, after that, nobody wanted to meet with him. And the
Meet with
Bernsteins
Tom Wolfe or meet
went with with the Panthers after that because it was a fundraiser. That's why they were in New York.
right.
And last year, the Bernstein's daughter wrote how they were the Kaepernicks of their time. And, I really thought about it. And I said, not only were they, so were we. How we got ostracized, uh, no more birthday parties, no more hanging out with family. Uh, it was a very, very lonely time, but sacrifices had to be made. Like I say, my mom was bougie, but she did have her moments, because she fought for daddy. She was always in there with the attorneys, but as far as though her walking down the street holding a sign,
That wasn't going to happen?
no, that wasn't going to happen.
Mom wasn't going to the protest ralies?
No, not her Charles Jourdains or her Blahniks. No.
So she was that kind of bougie.
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right. So, as we move through this, Dad is a Black Panther. You must have had some interesting house guests. Talk to me about just one house guest that, now that you look back, you're like, whoa, so-and-so was in our house.
Well, from what I've heard, the weathermen. You're like, you look back and you find out who they are and what they were. Because we had all the Panthers in our house, everybody. But to have people like that, you're like, wow. So this is who he was hanging out with. Because unfortunately, I was young. So these aren't things, your dad's going to sit down, hey, this is what we're doing right now, blah, blah, blah. One thing about my daddy, he was always my daddy. Like I would set in my forward, the two sides. So it was just him being him.
Just him being him.
Yeah, him being him.
All right. Well, I got some permission to actually do this interview right now, and I kind of pre-recorded a couple breaks for radio so that I could come over here and do this interview with you because you're only in town for a few days, so it's really very important. I got to say hello to Beatrice Gonzalez, Curtis Nevarez, Marcus Lewis. Hey, hello, Marcus. And Curtis, again, saying hello. Glad everybody could be with us today. Dr. Betty checked in there for a few minutes, and we are here talking about a book that has just been released. It is written by Field Marshal Donald Lee Cox, his life in the Black Panther Party. And his daughter, Kim, is with us today, sharing some thoughts and reflections on life with Dad. So how do you see, knowing your father and knowing the kind of man, the incredibly eloquent, this book is so eloquently written. It's just amazing. It's so clear, his passion and the message that he's trying to get across to people is that you have to take ownership in the mistakes that you've made. And you can't rely on historians to write this story. It's so important that the people living the moments reflect on them, learn from them, and pass that knowledge on. So having a dad like that must have been because I know it's overwhelming sometimes when you've got a father like that.
But see, at the time, I didn't realize it. He was always just daddy. Like you say, that the eloquence and everything else, that's how he was. If he wanted to learn something or do something, he picked up a book. When he was in exile in France, he bought a place in the south of France. It was a barn, but he ended up building a house because he went and bought a book. And he goes, yeah, see, it's level. He got the little leveler. I said, but Daddy, not everybody can buy a book and build a house, but that was him. He wanted to fly planes in the polo fields. Back in the day, they had wooden planes, 3 feet wingspans. He wanted to do it. He went and bought the book to learn how. That's just how he was. He had a thirst for knowledge. But he wanted to, like you say, impart that to others. Because what he was trying to say is, look at this. Don't do the mistakes we did. Do better. That's a message I get from this.
Now, you mentioned as a child, and once everybody kind of found out that your dad was in the Black Panther Party, that all of a sudden you didn't get invited to the birthday parties anymore and people couldn't come play at your house anymore, huh?
No.
So talk a little bit about that.
Well, that was the hard part. Only 10 or 11. And you wonder, where are your friends? But it was mainly the friends that you make from your parents that you've grown up with all this time, and things stop. And at the time, I didn't know it. You hear your elders, the whispers in the background, and some, but for a kid, you don't. And with Daddy, he was so into his stuff. He never really came and talked to us about that because, like I said, I'm 10, 11, 12 years old. But and my mom, since they're going through a divorce, they're not talking. So I just hate that we didn't get to have those long conversations after. But all he wanted to be, like I was telling somebody the other day when I went to see him right before he passed. He passed in February of 11, but I went in October. He still just wanted to be Daddy. Here, come sit. Like I always used to do, because my mother didn't do my hair. I had to sit between his legs so he could do my hair. I'm 50-something years old. But see,
you're sitting on the floor, Daddy's doing your hair.
He just wanted to be Daddy.
Uh-huh.
So he very much, when I say, he kept that away from us. He really enjoyed being that parent when he could, cooking for me. And I'm like, oh, my God. But he could cook because my mother couldn't. She was an only child. So, she was this spoiled brat little girl. But he just wanted to be Daddy.
How did they meet? How did someone with this kind of passion for change and for political awareness and social justice run into a diva?
Well, the diva was going to a party, and she saw this dude over there saying, and what Mama wants, Mama got. And so
she wanted a bad boy.
She latched on to Daddy and wouldn't let go. But really, it was basically at a party in San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's how they met.
Yep.
Do you think that politics and the fact that he was in the Black Panther Party led to them not being together?
Oh, yeah. And, my daddy was a player for real. He just loved women. And that was another problem. So,
I could see where that might be a problem.
Yeah. So, but it was, no secrets. That's just how Daddy was. I mean, he talks about all his mistresses in there. And on the weekends, we clean house. So Mama would say, hey, take Kim. And I'm walking around meeting them all, too. So I still have a pair of earrings that one gave me. I think I was 10, But at the time, I didn't know that's who they were. He never, going around hugging and kissing. He was just introducing me to people, And at the time, I didn't know. And there was nothing outwardly for me to know, saying, what are they doing? Mm-hmm. But that was just him. Yeah.
When you saw your father in 2011, he was living in exile in France.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
At what point did he leave the United States? He left because they were coming to get him for a reason.
Yeah. They're COINTELPRO. After we got the papers, the redacted and everything, and they were trying to get him on the conspiracy charge in Baltimore. In the book, he talks about he went there, they had somebody in a closet. Turns out he was an informant. Somebody killed him.
Somebody killed the informant?
Informant, right. Daddy wasn't there. He just happened to be going through Baltimore and going to go to the apartment, but they said, no, don't go, so he left. But they were just trying to get anything on him, so they put that on him. So he said things were getting hot with the party in San Francisco, and it was a chance to leave, and he took it. So he ended up in Algiers.
In Algiers, and then went on to the south of France?
After, yeah. Well, he ended up in Paris. He stayed there a long time, and he didn't go to the south of France really maybe until about maybe 15, 20 years ago, if that long. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was mostly in Paris once he left Algiers.
At what point did your father hand you this book, and what did he say? Because he had written it, so clearly he gave it to you. What did he say?
publish it when I die. And I'm over in France. I mean, it was about 6 inches thick in this heavy binder. And my French isn't good, so I just took a carry-on so I wouldn't have to say, where's this, where's that? And I'm like, you want me to take this now? And he goes, yeah. I'm like, okay. But, you think you have all the time in the world. It was the best thing he could have done. Things, as you read it, know that it couldn't be published until after he died. So I'm glad I was there.
Give me a couple of reasons why it couldn't. Let's give a couple teases that people will find in the book.
Baltimore, that's one.
Okay. Again, explain what happened in Baltimore in case someone's just tuning in.
Okay. Baltimore was the one with the conspiracy charge that they had finally leveled on him that made his decision to leave. They had found out the person that they thought was a Panther was a policeman. They killed him. Daddy wasn't there. Other things, oh, God, you name it. The gun running. When he would go get the guns, they tried to get him on that. Just a lot of things, But the book is very interesting. It'll tell you what happens over in Algiers with Timothy Leary when, unfortunately, he went over there, kind of messed up things, but also that they tried to do things with a lot of the African countries there. They had conferences, and he had never seen Black people like that, so that he was very impressed with that. And just the continent itself. So it was different for him.
In reading the book from your father that he has written about his life in the Black Panther Party, give me an example of something that when you read it, you just sat back and said, oh my gosh, wow.
You know the day you're going to die? Do you know the day you're going to die?
No.
He did. It blew my mind. See, the one thing I had to take away from this is the personal. I speed read. I read in one night. But when I read it again and read how he was going to break Huey out of jail, that blew my mind. He knew the day he was going to die. He told my brother that. Because how do you think he's going to get Huey out of jail? He's not. The only reason it didn't happen is because little Bobby got killed the week before. They had the shootout. And so it was tight at the jail, everything. So they called it off. That blew my mind.
Wow. So there's mention in the book about an informant. Talk to me a little bit about that, because generally speaking, when you look at the history of many organizations and people and parties, and clearly in our own politics right now, we see that it seems like there's always somebody stabbing you in the back. Yeah. So there was an alleged informant. Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit about that informant.
He was a policeman. That's one. You have the gentleman that was the bodyguard of Malcolm X.
Malcolm X's bodyguard was actually an informant?
He was a cop. Yes. Mm-hmm. There's so many. And you wonder why. You're not getting paid for this. So what is it? And that's one of the things he could never understand. And I don't either. If you're not getting paid, what are you doing it for? These are your people.
Mm-hmm. When you saw your dad in 2011 and when he gave you this book and he said, publish this after I'm dead, but publish it because...
He wanted the story to be heard. Those are his words. And so much has been written by Panthers, by non-Panthers. Some you glorify, the Panthers. And what I think he did, he just tore the Band-Aid off. This is everything. and that's what I like. And a lot of people don't like it, because he did. He tore the Band-Aid off, and to me, if you don't tell the bad things, how are you not going to make those same mistakes then? So you need to hear these things. And I'm very proud that he did that.
Have you gotten any flack from anybody about the book? I know the book has just come out. So we're getting one of the very first interviews because the book has just come out. Has anybody reached out and said, how dare you, how dare he say these things, let these secrets out about that time?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Too bad. That's my daddy. And he asked me, and I did it. My first words on there, my forward, promise made, promise kept. And that's what I did. If you didn't like it, that's too bad. You lived it. You can't always say what the good is and never talk about the bad. Then that's not reality.
Right. As you grew up, were there any things that your dad talked to you about as a kid, just regular father-daughter things that stayed with you that now you look back and you go, oh, that was actually kind of his philosophy of life that he, ingrained in me?
Well, not so much, but just watching what he did. Like I saying there, every weekend we went to the movies, but they were always war movies. My favorite movie, Guns and Navarone, Dirty Dozen. But, it was like he almost knew what he was going to be doing and let me look so I can plan this right or do this right. The Battle of the Bulge was his favorite one. It was boring to me, but that was his favorite. But, he was almost seeing, at that time, let me get it together so I know what to do. Just even if it's a little thing,
Studying strategies.
There you go. Yeah.
If there is something that you would like people to know about your dad from reading this, because I would imagine this would have been eye-opening for you to read this and see some things, because he left when you were at a young age. He, exiled from the United States and lived in Algiers and then moved to the south of France. So there were many years when he wasn't there with you. So was there a comfort in reading this?
I wouldn't say a comfort. It was just, so this is where he was when I wanted him over here. This is what he was doing. So I never thought of it as a comfort, but it was more so like that. Just wondering, where was he? Because when your parents divorced, I'm still there with my mom. She's still not saying nice things. She's saying one thing, and my brother and I, we thought that's how they were, but they were different. We thought my dad was over there, living up with some woman, but he wasn't. But, that's what parents do, when you're a child of divorce. And in the 60s, divorce was so new. Now people are co-parenting when they divorce.
They live in the same houses sometimes.
Yeah,
Right.
So, but back then, it wasn't so much like that. But, yeah.
So I'm going to look at another part of the book here. There was a foreword that was written by, you wrote a foreword, and then there was an introduction written by Steve Wasserman.
Yes.
Tell me about Steve's part in all of this.
Oh. It's so weird.
First, who is Steve Wasserman?
Steve Wasserman is the publisher of Heyday Books. Okay. And he, I think he's still has something to do with L.A. Times in the books there. He's great. But the funny thing is, I met him when I was little. I talk about how my dad picks me up at the San Francisco School of Ballet. His sister was going there at the same time. So all these people I'm meeting again, and going over old things, which is really cool. But Steve, he and his friend, he was political when he was growing up. Because of him, Berkeley ended up with the Black Studies program. They ended up calling a strike, and they did it, and that's Steve, and he what 17. So it's really cool how I'm meeting all these people. John Handy and my dad were very good friends. I've connected with him again. Oh my God, that was so exciting just to talk to him. It's just been wonderful. Just meeting people again, I guess you could say, and just getting those old attachments back.
When you look at the world now, and you saw your dad in 2011, so things have changed a little bit since 2011. What do you think your father would think about what's going on in the world right now? In this country. I'm not going to talk about the world. Let's just talk about this country. Because if this had happened in the 60s, I think there would be marching in the streets, people with signs. There would be a whole lot going on with what was going on now.
Yeah.
Happened then. With the manufacturing jobs that have been lost, the jobs that have been lost, just everything that this country just seems to be losing. I mean, I know there's a lot of talk that we've gained this and we've gained that, but some of the big things we've really lost. But I'm waiting for everybody to wake up. Like, when are you going to wake up and stand up?
That's some of the things I would have mixed feelings on because I guess it was the 90s. I go, did they die for nothing? And then things would get better. We thought, okay, they didn't die for nothing. But then now you're asking yourself again, but thank God we have Black Lives Matter. We have all of these groups that are trying, and I'm not blameless. We try to go to work, raise our kids, and that's life, but we have to take a stand. Sometimes. If you but sometimes it's with your money. If you got $1, because sometimes $1 is a lot to a lot of people, but it can help somebody, and I'm going to be honest. I don't know what he'd say because he was, I guess, exile. He became more Parisian than anything.
Really?
Yeah. Very French. Just being in the atmosphere and when you don't have anybody from America, you become where you are, so.
But I still think he would have been disappointed because if you look at France and look at the European countries,
that's what I was getting ready to say.
When something's wrong over there, these people take to the streets.
Yeah,
and I mean by the
Paris,
tens of thousands.
Yeah, what went on with the immigrants there? Mm-hmm. I think if it was he was still alive and all that going on, he'd have something to say. But he started mellowing, very much. But exile can wear on you.
I would imagine so. It must have been very difficult.
Yes, it was. Because what he knew and, what we're comfortable with, it's not there. His comfort zone, it was gone. The people, the friends, they'd go over and see him, but, it wasn't the same as people staying there, same friends that you can talk to all the time.
Right.
So, yeah, it was sad there at the end because, he was older and he's by himself, I'm just glad I got to see him.
And glad he gave you this book.
Yes.
Again, the book is by Field Marshal Donald Lee Cox, My Life in the Black Panther Party, Just Another Nigga. And he was very adamant about the title being exactly what it is.
Yes. Do not change it. And
why? Because I know for some people, they'll look at this title and be like, oh my gosh, how could you have put out a book with this title?
He wrote it in 1982. Everybody said nigger, and for me, my grandfather, he was born in 1900. Daddy was a slave. He told me, black folks ain't a nigger. Anybody can be a nigger. So see, to me, it never had to do with color. It was a person and not a nice person, so I was going to keep that title. If you didn't want it, that's fine. Like I've told you, I've had people steal the book, had to get a lawyer to get it back, things like that. So obviously they liked it. They just didn't want me to have it.
And you're his daughter.
Yeah.
Well, in conclusion, thank you so much for being with us today. It was, and for letting us be one, like it's your first Facebook Live. I know about this book, and thank you for being one of the very first radio interviews for this book. But I'm going to leave everybody with another quote from the book that your father wrote to just show the incredible elegance of this man here. It says, "We refuse our own history by blaming everything negative that occurred on COINTELPRO." And that's the organization that was after them.
No,
correct?
that was what the government put in there, a program to discredit them.
Right. Okay. So that was the fake news.
There you go.
That was the fake news put out to discredit the Black Panther Party.
There you go.
Okay. So it says, "We refuse our own history by blaming everything negative that occurred on COINTELPRO. That is a very convenient way of avoiding analysis. That also gives the pigs much more credit than they merit. When Huey fell, we so desperately wanted to save him from their clutches and possibly the gas chamber that we glorified him. Far and wide, north and south, east and west, the actual Huey could not survive the Huey we created. How many could have resisted? We killed Huey with our love."
There you go.
What a profound thing to say.
Yeah.
And you know, the other quote where it talks about the mistakes are the nursery of new ideas. We must share them. If we continue to hide and distort our errors, those coming after us will be condemned to repeat them. We cannot afford the luxury of leaving it up to historians to reveal what we did after 50 or 100 years have passed. Present conditions demand that we tell our stories now. And that's what this forum and this platform is all about, is the power of voice. Yeah. Being able to tell the stories now and not wait for somebody else to tell them. So thank goodness that your father decided to write this book and gave it to you and said, please wait until I'm dead to publish this, which you have. Yes. You granted his wish, and now you have completed his wish. Yes. The book again, Just Another Nigga, My Life in the Black Panther Party, written by Field Marshal Donald Lee Cox, his daughter Kimberly here with us today. Kim, thank you so much for sharing your dad, his wishes, this incredible book that really will give you such an interesting perspective on the Black Panther Party. It is a perspective that I wouldn't have guessed based on just, of course, what I've been fed from news and stories and the little bit of history that is told to us about the Black Panther Party. After reading this, I look at the whole situation totally different. And maybe that was your dad's goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here we are.
So thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
And there we have it. So if you really want to read an interesting book, if the Black Panther Party and history, the history of what we have done here in the United States, the things that have gone on, please pick the book up and read it. You will enjoy. You might not agree with everything, but that's the beauty of living in this country. We can read, we can learn, and make our own decisions based on all of the information available to us as to how we want to proceed, how we want to fight, how we want to revolt, how we want to decide that we don't agree with something. And that's what it means to live in this country. And that's what I will continue to fight for, the right for the power of voice for all of us. I'm Josefa Salinas. Thanks for being with us.